Hiya! Welcome to my 38th episode of VideoFuzzy. I'm your host, Terry J. Aman, and this installment, titled Shows I'm Not Watching, is a bit of a departure from the usual. I sit across from my friend Jesse Zimmerman of the Average Movie Nerd blog to get different perspectives on shows I've chatted about here, along with shows I have not. I also talk about a few podcasts I've been listening to, and the season finale of American Horror Story, Apocalypse. Welcome to the show.
He doesn't have that on video, does he? We'll find out together on VideoFuzzy.
Before getting into it, I wanted to give some quick shout-outs to some great podcasts I've encountered and been binge listening to at work. One gave me some audio advice I've tried to address in the last several episodes, and well, I've got a Methodist background, so in my head I'm always moving on towards perfection. That's my intention, at least. But he's Chris Cooling from the Forgotten TV Studio of Solitude, and over the past couple weeks I've been enjoying his Forgotten TV podcast, subtitled TV Memories of the 70s and 80s. If you thought you were watching TV in the 70s and 80s, I'm here to tell you no, you weren't. This guy was. He was watching it. He was writing his own episode guides to Battlestar Galactica. It was homework for him. He worked at a movie theater as his first job. I think this podcast might actually be his dissertation. It's incredibly well researched, but more than that, he pulls audio clips from a lot of different sources, and they all come in beautifully mixed. I've got to say, I'm really impressed with the content and the production values. Plus, when he says Forgotten TV, that's saying a lot. I thought I watched a lot of TV growing up, and honestly, I never encountered half of the shows he talks about in this thing, especially the Saturday morning cartoon stuff, and we were in front of that box every Saturday morning. Possibly different markets had different shows, but listening to this thing is like a completely different window on my growing up years, and I'm really enjoying it. Unfortunately, as I am wont to do, I binge listen to these things whenever we have some downtime at work, and I've caught up to him now. He just released his Spooky TV Movie of the Week episode, and it was brilliant as always. Unfortunately, that means I have joined the ranks of his followers waiting eagerly for their next nostalgia fix. Until then, there are, I suppose, always reruns. Other media podcasts I'm mostly caught up with include Damn That Television by Matt Treist and John Wive. Mentioned them before. Always quite listenable, always insightful. They're very conscientious about spoilers, which don't worry me so much in that we tend to watch different shows, and that's cool. But this podcast was the driving force behind my getting off my butt and joining the Cognoscente and loving Mike Schur's The Good Place on NBC, which you'll recall I binge-watched seasons 1 and 2 ahead of the season 3 premiere, and now am just waiting for new episodes from week to week and just blown away by them when they get here. Anyway, Matt and John have a heavy focus on the CW, which makes a lot of sense since John works at a comic book store and the CW runs a lot of superhero properties right now. And they also tend to watch good movies, which I'm glad because I can't always get to the new releases when I want to and can get a good sense whether I'm truly missing out or not. Mostly I love their insights and attitudes, and it's always good to hear points of view that are not your own from time to time.
Video out.
Speaking of, I had a chance to sit down with my friend Jesse Zimmerman here in Bismarck, watches absolutely everything. Think David Krumholtz's Mr. Universe from Serenity. I met Jesse when I was doing community theater in Minot, assistant directed for him in a ridiculous mystery farce called Mumbo Jumbo, and played the Marley to his Scrooge in the nuttiest noises-off production of A Christmas Carol. Between food poisoning and a profoundly sprained ankle, that production was actively trying to kill us, but not before Jesse's immortal line, "Has anyone seen my pants?" Other productions we were in, like Twelfth Night and Catch Me If You Can, went a lot more smoothly. Anyway, I met up with Jesse a couple weeks ago here, and we got to chat about shows I'm not watching. Here's that conversation. You're Jesse Zimmerman, who the average movie nerd.
That is me.
And you've been running that blog for a while, I think.
Yeah, on and off for 7 years.
Mm-hmm. Comments on movies, but also shows that you're watching and
TV, music, pretty much everything here and there.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And the reason I had thought of bothering you about getting some thoughts on things, well, first off, you have a chance to watch quite a range of shows, and you're your tastes are different than mine. The shows that you like are often the shows that I would kind of like, but let go by. Like, for example, we were talking about Archer. That was one of the ones.
Danger Island was the one that just finished this last spring, and I got a chance to watch that. It's very entertaining. It's kept the funny throughout the years.
And that show is pretty. I would have said really consistently funny, but for me, it was one that I let go as soon as it kind of got stuck inside his head. But they sort of continued the coma theme, and
yep. It's a creative way to keep the series going and keep it fresh every year without having to stick to the same trope.
One of the ones that I thought you would like, but it's really you kicked to the side right away was the CBS show started up this fall was FBI.
Yeah, FBI. I watched. It might have been. I might have to go back and try to rewatch the pilot episode, but I got about maybe 20, 25 minutes into it. Didn't care about any of the characters. It was so generic to me anyway that it just didn't hold my interest at all.
Oh, that wasn't the Dick Wolf one, was it? He did something else.
No, FBI is
that was the Dick Wolf
one.
and he had been Law and Order. He's done very successful TV
and all the Chicago's. I'm an avid fan of the Chicago's Fire Med PD.
So what fell apart for this one? I mean, it seemed to be emergency responders in an emotionally gripping situation.
I mean, it started off. The premise of it was good, but the premise was the same as Quantico. There was some sort of mass explosion within the city of New York, and FBI responds to it. It's just for some reason, I lost interest in Quantico too after the second season. Just got too convoluted. But with this one, there wasn't really anybody in it that grabbed my attention. The only name attached to it was Dick Wolf that I really had any interest in tuning in because, he's put on quality television for the last 30 years. So I gave it a shot, but I might have to go back and look at it again because I think it did get picked up for a second season already, or at least got a full season run this year.
Well, almost certainly part of that is going to be on the weight of the creative team. And,
sure, for sure.
But also, I think that the twist that they went for, I think just after you stopped watching, was that whereas the focus had been like, oh my God, these gangs are blowing each other up and targeting each other, and actually it turns out that they're being supplied by white supremacists, and political leaders within the power structure are also targeting basically black people on either side of this conflict, and basically saying, well, if we can get these guys to target each other, we can make them look worse, and also say, see, our racism is right. But it's like, okay, well, that also isn't selling the show for me. But it sounds like you're when it's tied to a locality or a culture that they can kind of explore with Miami was Chicago you mentioned, or those feel like a little better.
Well, take for example last year's freshman shows on CBS, S.W.A.T and SEAL Team.
That was Shamar Moore from
Criminal Minds. Who that was the reason I tuned into that show because I like Shamar Moore on Criminal Minds, and he's a good actor.
Very charismatic, beautiful man.
And I had high hopes for that one, and I had the opposite hopes for SEAL Team. I was like, I like David Boreanaz, but it's military shows. I've never, it's not usually my cup of tea. After getting 5-6 episodes into both of them, it completely flipped. I stopped watching SWAT and continued. I'm now a huge fan of SEAL Team, and this season's been phenomenal.
Yeah, talk to me about that a little bit because I've always loved David Boreanaz.
Yeah. SEAL Team. It started out last year. It was it deals with the top SEAL team of the country and them going out on different missions and different things. And this season it dealt with the team dynamic and all that. With this season, it's dealt with the impact at home that those military families and having their people go off and don't know if they're going to be coming back, and what happens then, and what happens when something happens at home, and the impact of when a parent at home is gone now, and what happens to the person that had been deploying. Now they're the sole caregiver for the children, and it's been it hits all the feels, and it was so good and so well written, so well acted. I've been really impressed with SEAL Team this season.
Oh, I'm glad. I mean, it's not a kind of a show that I enjoy. As I commented on it a year ago when it started, I was like, oh, normally I would let this just go by because I'm not the target audience for these shows, but I am a fan of David Boreanaz, so I wanted to see what it was, how it was starting out.
And it does something in shows that with premises that either you like or you don't like. It's got a certain premise, but it focuses more on the people than the premise.
Yeah, and I noticed that in the writing. I mean, they were clearly humanizing the team that was going out there. They're showing them at church. They were showing their family connections and trying to build that in. Which pilots are densely written. I mean, you've got to develop a lot of real estate,
especially with a show like that where there's so many quote unquote main characters, and not just one or two main characters. There's another pilot, and I'll talk to him in a minute, this season that does that really well, that manages a large amount of non-tangential characters, that this focus group of, there's probably 8 or 9 characters that have big parts every week, and they handle it so well, combining and giving everybody a moment to shine.
That's cool. Yeah, because sometimes when you have ensemble productions, sometimes it kind of focuses in on the names or whatever, but if they just sort of like spread that out a little bit, you also probably get a richer story.
This Is Us does it very well.
Yeah, that's one that I completely went completely by me. Now there's this whole universe of people who are us, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't know anything at all about this show. So
well, it's created and written by the guy who created Gallivant.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I went into it going, okay, it's the guy who created Gallivant. I loved that show. It was brilliant. It's beautiful. And the first episode was like, oh, ugly cry. It's just beautifully done every week.
You really do. Okay.
Yeah. Wow. And the stories that you connect with every one of the characters in some way, somehow. And I know people will connect with specific characters way more than they do the other ones, but he gives you an opportunity to know these people,
Well, and you and other friends of mine, just opinions I respect, absolutely love this show. Emmy has loved this show. I mean, it gets acclaim awards. It's gotten a lot of recognition and probably deservedly so. I just like, okay, well, I'm completely unaware of that. Probably like I was for Buffy for all of its run almost, except for like the last season, at which point I scrambled to get back up to speed on the rest of that show, and then I was like, oh wow, this is really good stuff. So
there's another show that debuted this year on ABC that's going to give This Is Us, I think, in the long run, a run for its money, and that's A Million Little Things. Beautiful. It's a fantastic cast. It's the what's his name? David Berlanti. He was the lead in Grimm. James Roday, the lead from
Psych.
From Psych, yeah, and he was in I want to say is Rami Maleko. Is that his name? He was in 40-Year-Old Virgin. He was one of the sales associates in 40-Year-Old Virgin. And then Ron Livingston as well is in the cast, and it's just a beautiful drama that's centered around this group of friends, and something happens in the pilot, and that completely drastically affects everything. And it's that saying, it's not one thing, it's a million little things that lead to certain situations. It's beautifully done. I will be surprised if James Roday does not get nominated for some sort of award at some point for this role.
That just started, and you're already seeing any glimmers.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, he's so brilliant. Well, the whole cast is. I mean, the female leads in the show are fantastic too.
Well, I've loved him forever. I absolutely enjoy it. I just love Psych. Psych's fantastic. So.
I think they're doing another Psych movie. But
well, they'd certainly set it up if they had. Oh God, now her name has gone completely out of my. Just Juliet's brother came in at the last second of the last
John
one.
Cena,
And, they were going to have another adventure. It's like, oh, okay, I guess that was the final frames of that movie.
Lawson, she's on this season of Lethal Weapon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Another show that I didn't see.
I liked Kane Crawford. He was fantastic as Riggs, and all that kerfuffle last season with him and Damon Wayans not getting along and whatever, and then Crawford got fired from the show, and they replaced him with Sean William Scott. I like Sean William Scott anyway. He's funny. He's good. He's entertaining. He's really good in the show. But going forward, Damon Wayans is done. He said he's going to quit. He's already quit. So I don't know how they're going to go forward now that in Lethal Weapon, both Riggs and Murtaugh are going to be gone. So I don't know what they're going to do and how they're going to go forward, but it's going to be interesting to see. But Sean William Scott is filled some shoes, some big shoes.
It was an established show. You're coming in that's something that it already has a pretty good history.
Coming into the third season.
Well, that's another one, and these are shows that I hadn't seen. And one of the things that I had hoped to bring up was a post that you had shared, which I think has opened my eyes really wide on some of the ways that I've talked about shows. And I wanted to acknowledge this and celebrate it a little bit, because if you don't like a show, you can just not watch it. You can just not crap all over it. Because if you're, if somebody is getting some joy out of something, like pineapple on their pizza or whatever, why do you need to crap all over that? Why do you need to yuck their yum? And I get that. I want to keep that top of mind when I'm talking about shows that really are not. I mean, there are going to be things that honestly I think have been they're exploitative, or they're just not badly written. But you can talk about that without saying, okay, but the people who watch this are damned idiots. They're just, I mean, who could enjoy these things? And
unless it's crappy reality television, then there's almost no excuse for that. But
the excuse for that is ad sales and
they're cheap to make.
Yeah, they're absolutely
zero money to make, really.
No.
But yeah, I like
no
the
thought
term
behind it.
Yeah.
There's no creativity behind it. You can't respect the. I mean, if you can at least say, okay, there's something here that is a story that somebody's enjoying. So I mean, okay, say it's something that you're not watching because you can't access it. It's on a streaming service that you don't have. That's another thing. That I think is valid. If it's on network television or cable TV or a cable package that somebody doesn't have, I completely understand not having a history with these shows. But if it's just a show that I didn't like him, or I've always thought that she's really just done a terrible job or made horrible decisions. Storytelling, you can kind of say, well, okay, sure, don't watch it. Don't watch it, and you don't need to comment on it.
And to speak to that, the term, I've always hated the term guilty pleasure. It denotes that there should be shame in something, and there shouldn't. If it gives you pleasure, do it. Enjoy, unless it affects other people in a negative way, do it.
But it's you on a screen.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
You watching a screen. It's not like you bringing a whole bunch of people in to watch something only
if
you
you're
like.
tying people down and force feeding, this show to them,
Survivor.
Oh God.
The Bachelorette. What are they on, season 40 of these things?
Don't care. the only one I watch is The Voice, and I watch it until the live rounds, because up until that point, it's a somewhat legitimate talent competition. But once it hits the live, then it's popularity contest. And I think that's my problem with most of those shows is being popularity contests and I call it lowest common denominator television, because you're pandering to audience X for XYZ reasons.
But then other high-end shows like Game of Thrones, that one's coming back. People are very excited, and
I can't wait.
Things that I've never seen, and I'm really sure that stuff is actually you don't need this. You can just stream stuff. It is my least favorite way to watch television is to stream something.
Of how we grew up. We grew up with that anticipation of, I can't wait till Monday when this show is on, or I can't wait till Wednesday when I can see this show again. And there's a cliffhanger for this week. I gotta wait 2 weeks because something's on next week. I gotta wait 2 weeks. Yeah, that anticipating of a television show built, I think, deeper fandoms as far as I'm concerned. But I do see the benefit in binging shows, because it's the best way to adapt a book. Because you can now do a 13-hour movie. Every season you can have a 13-hour movie.
Oh, for sure.
Because that's what it is. The new Sabrina. I just binged that last week. And
tell me about that. It's one I hadn't seen.
It's absolutely beautiful. If you like the original, it's absolutely nothing like the original. It follows more of the graphic novel storyline with the deeper, darker kind of.
And that was an offshoot of the Archie comics, but it went.
It went even darker when it went into the graphic novel versions of it. Well, even Archie comics, they went to an alternate universe, and there were zombies and all that fun stuff in the Archie universe too. But yeah, Sabrina, and it is set in the same world as Riverdale, because they mention Riverdale and different things throughout the new Sabrina show. But with that, it was, I can't remember how many episodes, it was 11 or 12 or however many episodes there were. It continued. It stopped at some point and then just kept just kept going with the story from it stopped here. The next episode picked up right where it ended. That was majority of the episodes were like that. I do like how that works.
Well, it's like you mentioned, it's almost adaptation of a novel. It is a development of characters that writers can they feel a little more empowered to develop a character over a season because they know that this is how some people are consuming the show.
I know Adam Savage talked about it. Somebody asked him a question at a some sort of panel event at some point, and they asked him what's the best novel that's been adapted into a movie or whatever, and he was like, well, with novels, because they're so large, you can't. I'm paraphrasing, but they're so big and so in depth that you can't pack all that into a 2-hour movie. That's why you said short stories are the best adaptations to books, like The Body was adapted into Stand By Me and stuff like that. But it's proving true that something else he said about how you can tell now with all these limited series or just these television series on Netflix and Hulu and all that stuff with these 10 to 13 episode shows, you can adapt something and let everything breathe. Because that's what you do in a book, and you can pull people in and stuff. Granted, there are some shows that have faltered because they've let things breathe a little too much. They could have compacted stuff down to maybe take an episode out, and you could have tightened up the story a lot.
I've heard that comment on different.
There's been a couple shows where, like the first season of Luke Cage, it drug a little bit for me anyway. It drug a little bit in a couple spots. I'm like, you could have dropped an episode out of this and tightened this whole thing up, and it'd been a way better story. But it was still watchable, still good. But yeah.
Well, you mentioned the Body. You've seen the Dark Castle or Castle Rock?
Castle Rock.
I was thinking Dark Tower.
Produced by J.J. Abrams. First season, it was fun. The first few episodes were fun, trying picking out all the different little bits and bobs here and there of this. Oh, that's a little Stephen King nod to this, and this little nod to this and this, and like you find out a couple of the characters, how they're related to other characters within the Stephen King, the universe and stuff, and the Castle Rock universe. It was predictable for me, but that's me who watches an exorbitant amount of TV and movies, so I've come to be able to figure things out faster than most people in shows, and just because of repetition. But it was enjoyable. It one of the best episodes was later in the season. It was really well done. I liked Skarsgård did a fantastic job in it. Going from being in Stephen King's the remake of the It to doing this show, from going from one creepy thing to another creepy thing. It was interesting, but the way they turned his character, it was good. But I am really looking forward to next season, what they teased at the end of the first season, because it's going to be more in the vein of American Horror Story, where it's more of an anthology type thing, have continuing characters from one season to another, but standalone story type things. I think next season's going to be really good.
Well, I was a huge fan of Kingdom Hospital. I loved. I'd say I loved. I can't actually remember anything about Rose Red, but I saw it, and I thought, he's done other television productions. He's certainly been involved in
just a couple years ago.
And so, Stranger Things is another one that I hadn't gotten a chance to watch, but I thought that everything that I've heard about it says that I need to be watching it. It's like, I haven't. I haven't splashed out for the Netflix subscription yet, but I understand that when I do, I'm going to just have to take a year off and just watch television.
Pretty much. Stranger Things. I think you would dig Stranger Things. Again, the actors that they got to play the kids are so good and so entertaining in and of themselves. Just watching interviews with them, going on different talk shows and stuff. They're just good kids. They're cool kids and fun kids. And that translates to, and they're good actors too, but it translates to the chemistry that they have on screen.
Awesome.
Is they have chemistry off screen. And it hits that nostalgia button too. It's like the Goldbergs. I love the Goldbergs. It's one of my favorite shows on TV, just because it nails that nostalgia for me. I know they had their 100th episode last season, I believe.
So it's going to be syndication. It's going to do.
It's been in syndication for a while now.
Modern Family is one that there's it's on entire channels at this point, and.
ABC's got another. Well, they got a couple sitcoms that came out this year. One, Single Parents, which is funny. I enjoyed that one. I'll keep watching that one. Another one that's in the same vein that hits that nostalgia button is called. I think it's called The Kids Are All Right.
Okay.
And it's set in the 70s, and it's about this Catholic family, and they have a bajillion boys. All they have a bunch of kids, and I think 7 or 8 kids, and they're all boys. And it's about, it has that narration of one of the kids and telling the stories about in the 70s. This is what happens. All of the kids are unique archetypes within a family. Like the oldest son, because it was a Catholic family, they wanted a priest in the family, so they pushed him to go to the seminary. Well, that was like in the pilot episode. He came back from seminary, and they were touting him around. Well, he quit, and is now that, the counterculture kind of vibe. One of the kids is the quintessential tattletale. The one kid is the archetype of the bad kid who's, he's the ladies' man or whatever, and you get the nerdy kid, and
And they're all, what would be the age range on this? If the oldest one is in seminary?
The oldest one is
seminary,
like 20 years old, and the youngest one is a baby, arms
so
baby.
it's the Duggins.
Pretty much.
That just it seems outrageous, but also it's certainly a reflection of there's already a reality show to reference. So obviously you can't say, well, that's unlikely. Somebody said 8 is enough. We had Brady Bunch. We had big families.
Well, the ABC is really kind of, that Goldberg was the inroad to it. And then they got Fresh Off the Boat, so that has that same narration theme to it now. So they got the 70s, 80s, and 90s covered now. Yeah, Fresh Off the Boat's really funny. I like that.
That's one, and it's one that I think I saw half of one. I was like, this is not.
It's a good premise. I like the premise. I like the show. But I like I said, I watch a ridiculous amount of television. And I've always liked sitcoms. I grew up watching sitcoms, and I'm glad that they made a resurgence. Blackish is one of the best shows on TV. Period. Sitcom, drama, whatever. Kenny Barris has done a fantastic job writing, producing that show, and then the execution is Tracy Ellis Ross, and they're just phenomenal. But like last season, it dealt with this established family who has had been a loving family and together and all that, dealing with what happens when a marriage hits that wall where it's a rut and you don't know if it's going to continue on. And I mean, it was 5 or 6 episodes at the end of the last season were just some heart-wrenching television to watch. And they did a beautiful job not only telling that story verbally, but also visually with how they changed the saturation of the actual camera of the footage. It muted everything. When it was even the camera was depressed watching this. It was so brilliantly done. I was really impressed with it.
Beautiful, and one that just is not in front of me. And not for any. I mean, I liked Grunge, so I'm sure I would have loved Blackish. I'm just like, time is a thing, but there's also I don't know. I've got right now 2,000 discs. I do not know how much is actually on that because right now they recorded at about 2 hours each. I've got 6-hour discs coming up. I do not know how many of those are, and we're just the physical number of 2,000 discs is like, well, that is going to take your attention. So I see a light at the end. I see it after this project is done. I will get them cataloged, but I want to know what's on all this. There's so much, and I keep finding new things. I was like, I've completely forgotten about that. And I was like, yeah, so I'm not watching a lot of new stuff while I'm, or new stuff that would probably get my attention more now. Is like, well,
it got to the point sometime, I don't know, a couple 3 months ago, I had caught up with all the new shows that I've been watching, and I had no new content. So I went back and started rewatching old shows and forgetting that, oh crap, I really love that show, and Drew Carey show, forgot how brilliant that show really was. And I found a YouTuber called Jay Leno Fly, that all he does is compiles guests and clips and different things of the Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson. And I watched probably every episode of the Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson because I think that man is just brilliantly funny. But rewatching, there's he'll take certain actors and actresses and have everyone that he can find anyway. For most of them, he finds them all. But every appearance on the show from start to finish in the 10-year run of that show.
There's a lot of really great programming. I'm missing a lot, so I was happy that I could just get together with you to pick your brain about some of the things that are up and some of the stuff that not been watching because, I don't know, maybe it's not to my taste, but I do not need to be that person.
Or you have a life and you don't have the time to do it. Or I have no life and all the time.
All the time. But yeah, I don't consider you to be a person who would watch things crap indiscriminately, though. I mean, I think that you probably are going to say, this is garbage. I'm not going to watch this.
Well, there's some. I'm trying to think. There's a couple shows that debuted this year, and there's a couple of them like, I'm not gonna watch that. Like last year when Young Sheldon came on, I watched the pilot episode and went, oh, I don't like it. It's just, it's not my cup of tea, and haven't watched it since. But it's been picked up and people seem to like it. I don't get it.
Well, I didn't know I did not know what was driving the popularity of Two and a Half Men. I am not 100% sure why I've watched as much of The Big Bang Theory as I have. But it was kind of like, this past year, Ralph usually watched that one, and he, even this year, he was kind of like, I've pretty much seen that.
Well, this is the last one, so it's going to be interesting to see how they send them off. What's going to happen? I have ideas on what might happen, but I don't want to say anything. Especially if I'm right. People get angry. You spoiled it. Like, I just guessed.
Yeah, how can you spoil it if they guess? Everybody's free to guess. Some people are just going to be right. But
yeah, there's a couple shows that were debuting this year that I had no interest in watching whatsoever. I'll give them a shot. I'll watch a little bit of it and either confirm or
like
expectations.
Was one that
Charmed was one that I was a fan of the original. I like the original. I like the campy nature of the original and that kind of stuff.
Oh, there was certainly some camp.
Well, for sure. But I liked some of the stories were fun. The interaction between the sisters, and I like the message that had. The original had, and it's the message is carried over the new one. Family is important, and it doesn't matter if you're fully related, been together your entire lives. Family. It's a nice message like that, and then the good versus evil, the whole 9 yards. But the new one fits into that CW lane very well. With their it kind of is taking the place of a couple different things that have now off the air. But I like it. I was pleasantly surprised at how good the pilot was. And I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I liked it. Give it a shot if you have any interest in that kind of stuff.
And the person who loved Buffy, loved Angel, I was really into Supernatural. As watching now season 14, I was more than no interest. I mean, I don't see a direction, but I also like this past week was just campy schlockfest Halloween fun.
It was so good. I loved the nod of when they were trying to get out of the comic book store and what lunchbox that they used. Did you notice that?
I missed that.
It was a Scooby-Doo lunchbox that they blew up. It was beautiful.
There have been a couple of references since Scooby Natural. They've I think Dean once said Jinkies, and
he did well, in this last episode of Supernatural, they're talking about costumes. Dean was talking about what costumes that Scooby and Shaggy.
Yeah, why not?
They got the look.
Come on, we already paid for the rights.
Yeah, the chemistry between those two is what drives that show.
You know what?
Oh, the new Magnum P.I. surprised the crap out of me.
Oh, is that what?
I went into it going, all right, how can you fill Tom Selleck's shoes and modernize that show? And they've done a really good job. It's got the humor that you knew and loved, and it's got the hard hitting moments and stuff. And I like it. I like the dynamic. I like the female Higgins take on it, and I like the storyline and how they've been doing it. I was pleasantly surprised on how well they did it and how much I like it.
I'm glad. I watched maybe about at least 3 or 4 episodes of Hawaii Five-0 when they on the reboot for that. That was because I was a fan of a few of the characters in it more than Daniel Day Kim and Grace Park.
She's on A Million Little Things now.
Okay. Oh, another cell for that. What channel is that one?
ABC. I want to say Wednesday nights at 9. Yeah.
But hey, I wanted to thank you so much for just willing to sit down and chat about stuff for a while, because these are more and more, as you were talking about them, realize, hey, there's all sorts of stuff that I'm not watching right now. that I probably could be.
Didn't even scratch most of it.
Say a decade from now, when I'm finished with this current project, I can try to track back and find some of these shows.
Yeah.
The million little pieces, at least, I'm going to pull up on demand. That
For
sounds
sure.
wonderful.
It's so good. It was one of the better pilot episodes that I've seen in a while.
This Is Us. I'm just going to have to pick up on Netflix when I have the port jacked into the side of my head, like all of us are going to have to.
Because that's just good television. That is just solid television.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jesse.
Thanks, Terry.
Jesse Zimmerman, everyone. That was delightful, and you can check out what he gets up to at the Average Movie Nerd page on Facebook.
What I've been watching.
As for my DVD collection, you know the usual point of this podcast. I'm afraid the past couple weeks have been a complete disaster in terms of cataloging. I managed to record a whole bunch of stuff for my current collection, which I'm sure once I get a chance here I'll actually get cataloged, but part of the trade-off was zero progress on my classic collection, so yep, I will be hitting that much harder this next week and otherwise be rejoining our regular programming already in progress. Speaking of progress, like I said, I have yet to catalog it, but this weekend I recorded Disc X200 in my current collection, which means I've recorded about 1,200 hours, or that's about 2 months worth of material since January of 2017. More once I've cataloged it, but movie-wise, that now includes the dark prequel to the Hannibal Lecter trilogy in Hannibal Rising, the Jennifer Lawrence biographical triumph Joy, and the can it really be the 8th season finale to American Horror Story Apocalypse? Now, this just aired this past week, so spoilers, but I feel like show creator Ryan Murphy has really been building up to this one for a while. There were hints and references, most explicitly in Season 5, but sprinkled here and there throughout, that all of these storylines unfold within the same universe and are part of a larger overarching structure. By this logic, American Horror Story Apocalypse was really American Horror Story Coven Part 2, with a slingshot round the sun harking all the way back to American Horror Story 1, The Murder House, where a time-traveling witch... dropping the needle right here is just going to be confusing. I haven't kept up commentary on this series sufficiently to just start talking about the finale right out of the blue, so here's the show so far on Season 8. The world exploded, and for a couple of years a tiny, wretched, huddled handful of survivors made each other's lives miserable in one of a few outposts designed specifically to house, as it turns out, the Illuminati of all people. The world's richest and most powerful brought about the destruction of humanity via mutually assured destruction, detonation of the world's nuclear arsenal through... Seriously, their names were Mutt and Jeff, a couple of amoral code monkeys designing malevolent sex toys and consuming cocaine by the shovelful, and apparently plotting the world's destruction. They'd met a powerful warlock who carried the mark of the beast, but otherwise seemed a bit rudderless. Well, one day, because one of them, Jeff, I believe, the blonde one, played by Evan Peters, was mildly inconvenienced by a distracted commuter, and instead of honking his horn at her, decided, you know what? We'll harness that Antichrist mojo and bring about the end of the... No, wait. I'll start again. What are we going to do tonight, Jeff? Same thing we do every night, Mutt. Try to blow up the world. Despite traditions that seem to align the power of witches with the Prince of Darkness, the Antichrist, Michael's father, they're actually opposed, it seems. The witches become aware of this rising force out of darkness and travel to the Warlock Academy to confront it, bringing along a mind reader named Bubbles to find out what's going on. Well, it seems like someone, post that visit, someone, I'm guessing probably Michael, dismembered the Coven of Warlocks, presumably to summon Satan, and... Well, I honestly know that this is not a good reflection of this following, that in the Wiccan tradition, male and female energy is cherished, nurtured, and respected, and both men and women are properly called witches. But in this show, witches are more powerful than warlocks, and what's more, despite being caught unawares by this Antichrist development, the witches all bring each other back to life, pulling each other out of hell. They connive and scheme to position themselves by such means as they can to thwart this end-of-world production, including burying themselves in a nearby graveyard in a death-like sleep until it's more or less safe for them to come out, rise up, and confront Michael. They determine that there's a moment in Michael's timeline when he's vulnerable, when he's kicked out of the murder house by Jessica Lange, reprising her season 1 role as Constance Langdon. They send a powerful young witch, Zoe, I think it was, back in time to run him over in the street. It works. Michael is destroyed. The apocalypse is averted, and voila, the events of this vaguely ridiculous but certainly indulgent season never happened. But in the weirdest twist of fate, just a few years later, the 2 young, genetically ideal kids pulled in to survive the apocalypse in Outpost 3, the one that, yes, never happened, meet up by chance on their college campus. They fall in love and have a child, and that child, oh wow, you will not believe this, turns out to be, the Antichrist. Okay, so, well, death-defying and time-rewriting witches did manage to confront the Antichrist and save the world, but for how long? Well, it feels like even as a child, the Antichrist can't seem to go a week without killing someone, so it's only a matter of time until this one is locked up as a serial killer, but I do hope they move on from this theme in the foreseeable. Horror themes in American Horror Story aren't always supernatural. Along with killer sci-fi androids and witchcraft and time travel, and oh hey, because of Zoe's gift of prophecy, it looks like Queenie will get to avoid an eternity playing Gin Rummy with a psycho ghost this go-around. Apocalypse gave us socioeconomic inequities, fear of heedless death, fear of snakes, fear of famine and want, fear of being trapped forever in untenable situations with people one hates, fear of terrible jobs, fear that our leadership is acting counter to our best interests, fear that our children could grow up evil. The list goes on and on. It's one aspect of this show that I've always appreciated, along with the spooky, evil, supernatural elements. The thing that goes bump in the night is sometimes your father taking off for a pack of smokes and never coming back. Yeah, this show does manage some darkness. In the range of offerings, Coven 2 was definitely in the middle of the pack, probably nearer the top than the bottom. It started out shaky, but pulled through in the end with strong callbacks like Cordelia and Constance, oh my god, Myrtle, and even that cameo with Stevie Nicks. The universe of the show is expanding, and I'm looking forward to seeing where Murph and them will be taking us next. And beyond that, thank you so much for checking in on what is usually my video cataloging project. You can check out my catalog listings along with audio links at VideoFuzzy.blogspot.com and past episodes at Apple Podcasts. Feedback is always appreciated. You can contact me through my blog or podcast sites or through my VideoFuzzy page on Facebook, or you can follow me at TJVideoFuzzy on Twitter. For VideoFuzzy, I'm Terry J. Aman. Happy viewing.
It might be amazing, it might just be scuzzy. We'll find out together on VideoFuzzy.